Okay.
Uh, yeah, we
I think the Norwegians are coming in pretty strong too.
I know. I was
Hufta,
I
Hufta.
was trying to get a couple of Lakotas, um, Deloria. I just texted them because they said they wanted to come, but we'll see. They live in
So
Killeen, Texas.
International person.
yes, and Lynn is born in raised, grew up in Australia, most of her
Wow.
life in Australia.
Wow.
Lynette here. Yep, and so yep. I I thought uh, that the Norwegians would take a back seat today, but seldom do they take a back
They're
seat. So,
very competitive.
hey, oh, and by the way, a very interesting ethnographic note. Okay, the new Secretary of Interior, Deb Holland,
Yeah. Oh, she's Norwegian
half
and
Norwegian.
yeah,
Hey.
yeah,
And Puebla. She's from one of the pueblos.
yeah.
Yeah, I thought.
Oh, here is Asa.
Oh, Asa?
There he is. That's Samantha and Asa. There, now the Lakota, it's a tie now, Lakotas and Simpsons.
Uh-oh.
Oh, great.
Who is that?
Hi, Samantha.
Hurry, lock the meeting. Don't let any more in.
Oh.
Yeah, we got to enjoy this moment, don't we, Roxanne?
Oh.
Well, there has to be three of them then, because there's three Simpsons, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And most likely there's three there
Oh,
too. Asa and Samantha. So, oh, their mic is off. You can ask them to turn it on.
Asa, could you turn on your, there you go. Now you could also turn on your video if you would.
Oh, that'd be
We're driving
fun.
right now.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi. Oh, I
Awesome.
hear kids. I hear the kids.
We logged in. We're driving, right? Asa's driving. I'm sitting passenger, but we're coming back from Fort Worth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we thought we would log in. We're just caught in traffic, so we're not really doing too much.
Okay. Is Amani with you?
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Let me turn on my video here.
Yeah. There he is. Hello.
Hi, Alani. Hey.
oh,
Hi.
Hey. Hey, good to see you. I missed you last week.
Do you
When
remember
the-
Little Risk?
Yeah.
We went to Oxford.
Hey, I see some little girls' heads.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Oh, you're so pretty. Look at those eyes. Wow.
Oh my God.
Hi. Okay, we're definitely outnumbered, but I'm happy now. You got a whole tribe in that car.
Yes,
Yay.
we know.
Hi.
Well, welcome. I think Asa was about 13 the last time I saw him. So,
Yeah.
Oh, he's quite grown now.
in your
Man of the world.
He's
ah,
There he
somebody's
is.
husband
hello, Asa.
Hi.
Hey,
He's one of our protectors
that's
Yeah.
in the government.
Yep.
Yeah. There's Samantha.
Hello, Samantha.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And my brother Earl is up here too.
hello.
Andrew.
And we
Oh, there. Hi.
Good share. Awesome. Share
Okay. Well, I think we're ready to start. So I'm going to read a prayer. I'm going to read a prayer, and then I would like to, after that, I'll introduce Lori, and we will, Deloria, and um, we will start. This is a prayer of the Bob, protection prayer. So for our travelers and for all of us who are negotiating the pandemic.
Hmm.
Say, God sufficeth unto me. He is the one who holdeth in his grasp the kingdom of all things, through the power of his hosts of heaven and earth, and whatever lieth between them, he protecteth whomsoever among his servants he willeth. God in truth keepeth watch over all things. Immeasurably exalted art thou, O Lord. Protect us from what lieth in front of us and behind us, above our heads, on our right, on our left, below our feet, and every other side to which we are exposed. Verily, thy protection over all things is unfailing. Well, we want to welcome you all and especially thank Deloria for agreeing to speak with us tonight and share with us tonight. Um, Deloria is on the National Spiritual Assembly of Canada and has lived in Canada for how many years now?
Since 1991.
Since 1991. Yes,
A goodly amount of time.
a goodly amount of time. Yes, about long enough, right? So I would like to just turn the Zoom over to Deloria and let her have the floor.
Thank you. So, first of all, I'd just like to um, just give my greetings to each and every one of you. And especially I give a shout out to my nephew, Ohie Salak, and his beautiful wife that I've never met before, but I've seen her on Facebook. I feel like I know her, and they're beautiful children, and appreciate they making the effort to take their time to be here tonight. And then the Henriksons, I feel like are my relatives as well, because I've known them most of my life, really, and known them and known of them. And so I'm not Norwegian, but I like to claim, I would like to claim a little bit of Norwegian, because a relative that I did have, I told them the story about this. It was during the 70s and 80s, in which kind of the whole AIM thing and everything, everybody was kind of getting in touch with their roots and so forth. So my husband's family is from Brockton, Montana. That's on the Fort Peck, Assiniboine and Sioux Reservation. And they're a very large family. My husband had 32 first cousins, and they all had many children, and all of my husband's father's brothers and sisters had many children. So it was quite a large family. And in this family, this large family, well, this one, we were visiting there, and my husband was recalling a story they were telling about one of his cousins was married to a man who was Norwegian, and they were everybody was kind of telling about their roots, and where their grandparents were from, and this and that, and, you know, various stories as are told when it gets into that topic. And they looked around the room and they said, "Hey, John," his name was John, "you're not saying anything." And of course, here is this one lone Norwegian sitting there amongst all of these tribal people. And he looked around and he said, "Well," he said, they said, "Well, where are you from and what's your background?" Where, you know, he said, "Well, and where are you from?" and so forth. And he said, "Well," he said, "you know, I'm Norwegian." And they said, "Well, where are you, where are you from?" And he said, "Well, I guess Norwegia." So that goes to show you that farm boy, he lived on the Fort Peck, Assiniboine and Sioux Reservation his whole life, I think. So he didn't know anything about his roots, but he felt perfectly comfortable in that circle of relatives and family. And they all got a big laugh out of it because some of them actually knew that there wasn't a place called Norwegia. And so I have to remember that when I see the Hendricksons, and I think about their very proud heritage. And so I also want to say that I had kind of a different thing in mind tonight. I was going to talk about because of they had someone here who wasn't a Baha'i. And so I thought, well, you know, well, any of these stories is appropriate, but especially had that one story I was going to tell. But since I don't know if Samantha is a Baha'i or not, but it doesn't matter, actually, is what the
prayer every day. The Bible, prayer is just every day.
That is so cool. You say the prayer every day, Samantha.
Hi.
That's her favorite word.
Hi. It's very important. She's communicating. Hi. So anyways, so I decided to change when I got the text from Diane. I decided to share a different story. And throughout telling this story, as people do when they share stories, it encompasses a lot of our ways of knowing and a lot of our ways of being. And of course, those ways of knowing and being that human beings have on this planet originally all came from God. Historically, the Creator never left any of his creation alone. So these experiences, these ways of knowing, we know originally were based somehow in spiritual teachings. So one of the things I was going to ask you each to do is I want in this story, this is a story about how my husband became a Baha'i. I wanted to honor his mother. His mother passed away when he was 2 years old, and she had tuberculosis, which was not an uncommon illness during those days. She had 8 children, and it was a very difficult situation for her. And that she had one desire, and that desire was that all of her children would go to this particular Christian school down in Arizona. And she really had a love for Christianity, a really deep love. And actually, she had met my father-in-law at a school where I think they both became very much closer to the Christian faith at Santee. So I want to especially honor her, and I want us all to honor our grandmothers. So if everybody can we'll just take turns. If you see, you can unmute and you can see if you're the only one that's unmuted, then you'll know it's your turn. So I'll start it off, and I want to especially remember Jane Halfred. She was from Cheyenne River, and that was Jacob's mother. So call out the name of one of your grandmothers that you want to call to be with us here.
I would like to call out the name.
Or Grandma Dolores.
Say again.
I would like to call out the name of Ragna Jakob's daughter. She was my dad's mother. She was born in Norway and came here as a young woman. And so I would like to call out her name. And I'll leave our other grandma up to my brother,
Okay.
who's here. So let him call out her name.
Okay, Ohiesa, you said something. I didn't hear you.
I was just gonna say, my grandmother Patricia Fox,
Okay.
and then Dolores.
I would like to say my grandmother, Dolores Bighorn,
Mhm.
just recently passed on.
Mhm.
Thank you. I knew her. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Whoa. She's here.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I will say my grandmother, Isabel Verney.
My grandmother is Janet Duncan, and she's from Metlakatla, Alaska. Passed on.
My grandmother is Rose Campbell, also from Metlakatla. No, she actually was born in Wrangell, but her family is from Metlakatla, and she's full-blood Michigan.
Mhm.
I would like to call out my grandmother, Antonina Ray, who is Sicilian and dreamed about Abdu'l Baha long before everybody in my family became Baha'is.
Wow.
She was a dreamer. She was very empathic.
At the moment, I cannot recall, but I'll.
No, it's your grandmother.
Yeah, it's my grandmother. Great. Yeah, my grandmother.
Was her last name Johnson?
Yes.
Great. Okay. She's here.
Okay.
And I'd like to call out my grandmother, my mother's mother. Her name was Catherine Alio. And she and my mother pioneered to Alaska when my mother was 16 and in the 10-year crusade for Shoghi Effendi. And she lived till she was 104. So, but I'm hoping she's still here.
Wow.
Yeah. And she, my sister-in-law reminds me, she was the first woman to vote for the first Universal House of Justice and when they were first elected. So
What was her name again?
Catherine Alio.
I would like to call out my grandmother, Christine Moe.
I'd like to call out my grandmother, Myra Cole.
Yeah, I will call out my grandmother, Mary Duffy from Kalispell.
I would like to call out Mary's my grandmother, Nancy Hall. Yesterday,
Nancy.
This is Leo Baldwin.
Oh, hello.
And his grandmother, he wants to introduce her.
Yes, I wanted to mention I knew Catherine Elio, and her name was mentioned. And I'm really old, and my grandmother was born in 1882, and her name was Ora, and her last name was Humphreys, and she was married to my grandfather and had 3 children. And he was one of the cowboys that went west in the 1900 to round up longhorn cattle. I'll tell you the story sometime. But her name is, and well, we all have 2 grandmothers, but her name, my father's mother, is Ora Baldwin. It's our family name. We're English. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to call out. I'd like to call out my grandmother, Clarabelle Albert, from Pennsylvania, who I would have never in a lifetime had enough time to spend with her, and would love to be out here in Washington with us.
Anybody else?
Can I say something about my grandmother? When I was introduced to the faith, and about 3 weeks is all it took, and I said, I have to be a Baha'i. I had a pamphlet that I mailed to my grandmother who had moved to Seattle. And my grandmother was very, very in love with Christ. She was a lover of Christ and tried to live a Christian life. And I said, Grandma, I want you to know this is what I want to follow this way. And it gave the principles of the faith. She wrote on the pamphlet, that's good. These are good Christian teachings. And I said, thank you, Grandma. Oh, and I still love my grandma to this day and talk to her, but she is approved of my becoming a Baha'i at a young age. So. And her encouragement always helped me stick to it. She stuck to Christianity and did a lot of good things in her life. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to honor Jane, Ragna, Dolores, Isabel, Patricia, Janet, Rose, Antonelia, Grandmother Johnson, Catherine, Christine, Myra, Mary, Nancy, Ora, and Clarabelle. Let me know if I've missed anyone or I didn't pronounce it correctly. Is it okay? Okay, they're present with us, and you know, they want to be called on, they want to participate, they want to be of service, and they have work to do, and we can call on them to be present and honor them for the work they've done in their lives. I'm sure every single one of these women worked hard, and I'm sure they sacrificed much, and I'm sure they had much wisdom, and I'm sure that their joy at being able to be here tonight with us will be contagious to us. So the reason why I called on them is because this mysterious situation we have in the world where we're a body, a material being that's walking through the world, but we're really preparing to go someplace and to participate in a world that's much larger than this and beyond what we really can understand, and what we grasp to get a little glimpse of. And these relatives of ours that have passed on are a part of that world. And they're always available to assist us. And we know that the power of those souls that have passed on is far beyond what we can imagine, because we don't really know. We can't really grasp these spiritual forces. So how this story begins is it begins with a mother who made this wish for her son and her children. She made a wish that her children would find their path to the Creator, a strong path. And in her case, it was Christianity. And her in-laws, her mother-in-law and father-in-law, were like pillars of the Dakota Presbytery Church on the Fort Peck Reservation. And the whole family was known, this whole Bighorn family is known for Christianity, their strength and their spirituality. But this boy lost his mother when he was 2. And so in growing up, he was raised by his grandparents. He had that experience of growing up in a time where those grandparents were a little bit, they weren't really sure what they should pass on to their grandchildren. They wanted to pass on their spirituality, but they weren't sure about their language. They weren't sure about their culture. But yet, my husband said when he was a little, starting from 2 on, when he was living with his grandparents in basically a one room house, he said at night they would go to bed, and that he and his sister would sleep with each grandparent respectively. And at night, the grandparents would get down on their knees by the bed and pray. But he said they would always pray in their own language. They didn't pray in English, but they prayed in their language. And that always made a question in my husband's mind about God. He had lots of questions about God. He wasn't taught the language, and he was really specifically, his grandparents did not want him to know the language particularly. They didn't make an effort to teach him. But yet every night when they conversed with their God, they conversed in their own language. He told another story when he was a little boy. He heard about this thing that people were talking about, that if you didn't like somebody, you could snap eyes at them. You'd snap your eyes. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but we can do a lot of mean things with our eyes. So snapping your eyes is just kind of closing them, just kind of in a way, and kind of looking away. So he heard about that snapping eyes business. And he said for a long time, he would lay next to his grandfather at night, and he would lay in his bed and he would try so hard to not snap his eyes at God. He would lower his eyelids so carefully, but then every time he just felt, I just think they snapped. So he had a lot of questions about God. And there's a lot of good cultural teachings about how we were such great observers. We had extraordinary powers of observation. But there wasn't a lot of encouragement to ask a lot of questions. If you were supposed to know something, it would eventually be revealed to you. Or you would see how it was done with your own eyes. But there wasn't lots of encouragement to ask, to be like a very questioning and what's this and what's that type of thing. So my husband had all of these questions, but he didn't really have a place to ask them. So time passed, and this man found his way to a conference and met this woman who they just met just for a couple of days. They didn't really spend any time together like this or anything. They just met each other at this Native Education Conference. And then when they left, they started up a phone conversation. And this phone conversation was very intensely spiritual. Because really, if you're having the best conversation of your life, it's about spiritual matters, isn't it? I don't think you're going to call, who won the game last week the best conversation of your life, or what sale you got the other day at the store. The best conversations of your life are deep, personal conversations in which you talk about the things that are really meaningful in life. And those really meaningful things are always attached to something of a spiritual nature. So these two carried on quite a spiritual conversation. And finally, at the end of a month or so, I told Jacob, well, you should come out here and see me, because I don't even remember what you really look like totally. And, this is very deep conversations we're having. It's getting very serious. And so I said, before you come out here, I have two things I want to tell you. And one of the things is that I had a baby when I was 16. And if that's a deterrent for you, then you should know that. And, then no one has to be hurt. The other thing is I'm a Baha'i. And I never, in all this deep spiritual conversation, we always talked about the spiritual matters that can be spoken about without bringing in necessarily any labels. And actually, in the Baha'i community, we're learning how to talk like that again. We're learning how to be able to converse with people on and deepen or elevate, as the case may be, elevate conversation in ways that we don't need to draw any artificial lines or enter the kingdom of names. We can just speak about these principles and these ways of knowing and these things of the heart without having to draw any lines between us. So anyways, but that was the time to draw a line, because I said, I'm a Baha'i, and that's a problem sometimes with some people. So if that's a problem to you, don't come here, because that's never going to change. And then he told me something else, and I said, well, that's okay. So why don't we get acquainted? So that's what happened. And when we were first married, so one of the initial things that happened is that when we got married, there was around 250 people at our wedding. And out of Jacob's 7 brothers and sisters, and his 32 cousins and their spouses, and his aunts and uncles, and this huge, array of relatives, one cousin attended the wedding. And the rest were, and some mutual friends of ours, but the rest were guests that I've known and grew up with. So that was really the first experience he had of understanding that when you want to look into truth, when you want to look into truth and search for truth, there can be some barriers. There can be some obstacles that are put in your path, and some of them are very painful. So people who are seeking to find out about this faith should know that right away. But then they say that anything that's really well worth searching for, well worth striving for, well worth working for, usually involves some kind of pain, some kind of pain and suffering, some kind of effort is exerted in order to get there. So Jacob experienced that, because at our wedding, his family didn't come, only one cousin. And they didn't come because of the fact that we had a Baha'i marriage. And it was, I don't really, my only comment about that is, if you don't know about something, you have to see the fruits of it with your own eyes, don't you? And they didn't know. They probably had all kinds of ideas about what it was going to be like, and they were frightened for Jacob. So they didn't feel like they could participate. But that was a very important learning for Jake about this. So at first, time passed, and we would have firesides at our home like we're having tonight. And even though Jake knew the answers to lots of things, if the conversation lagged, he would ask the questions. He would ask questions that would stir up the people that were there, so that they would ask more questions and we could get deeper into a subject. And it was really it was such a time living in Seattle. There was lots of Tsimshian relatives there. I remember that there were many beautiful times of talking about these deep spiritual matters. So time continued to pass. Actually, Jacob, found he had strong roots in Christianity, and he found that he dived into his own roots actually deeper. And in fact, at some point, I thought my husband was going to be a minister, because his brother was a lay preacher. His brother-in-law is from Pine Ridge. He's an ordained Presbyterian minister. And it just is very strong in the family. And I thought, wow, he's going to become a minister. And then I don't know what I'm going to do. Because because a minister's wife, there's a lot of expectation there. So as it turned out, that's a side story about the things that happened that caused him to decide that that wasn't the direction he was going to go. One of the things that happened is that really wasn't about the Presbyterian Church, but one of the things that happened is when Jelena, our daughter, was she must have been about 5 years old, I took our son Jordan and I took Jelena to feast in Spokane, Washington. And while we were there, there was a music video that had come out. In those days, we had very few materials. If anything came out, like a video or something like that, it was like everybody celebrated. So this, I'm sure you all remember this thing called Mona and the Children. Mona and the Children was a song about this young Persian young lady who was martyred along with 9 other women. And she was only 16 years old. And so that Mona and her children were out. And so we watched that at the feast. And we were all very excited. And it was so beautiful. And Buffy St. Marie was on there. And man, we just thought, wow. So I drove home and I pulled up in front of the house. The door swung open. Jelena got off the car and started running to the house crying. And when I got into the house, Jacob said, "What the heck is going on down at that place?" He said, "My daughter comes in the house. She's crying. She's saying, 'They can't do that to my sister. They can't do that to my sister.' What the heck is she talking about?" I was like, well, I don't know, but we watched this video and it was about this young girl called Mona, and this is what happened to her. But nobody said that that was her sister, but you could see the connection Jelena made with that girl. To her, that was her sister, and what happened to her was wrong. And it, broke her heart. So Jacob was not happy. I said, "Jake, when you see this video, you might see it differently." It took me a little while to get my hands on that because there were no copies. Of course, you know how things were. There was no copies. It was hard to get. So finally, I got my hands on it and brought it home. Jacob watched that over and over and over and over. And he said, if you recall the video, there's some chords that are played at the beginning of the video, rang, rang, like that, 4 times, because my husband was the kind of man who saw some meaning in everything. 4 times, which is 4 is a very sacred number to most Indigenous people, many Indigenous people. And he said every time he heard that rang, he said the icicles were falling from his heart. And so he was listening, he listened to it over and over and over. And at that moment, he developed a very intimate relationship with Mona. He and Mona somehow came together. And in his heart, he decided that they were relatives and that he would never forget her and that he would bring her into the classroom with him as long as he was able to. So again, we'll think about our grandmothers. We'll think about our grandmothers who took children in, who took sisters, who took relatives, who ministered to the needs of so many. They knew all about how to be meaningful in people's lives. So Mona, even though she was 16 years old, began to be very meaningful in my husband's life. And another occasion, he was talking to a brother. They had adopted each other. His name was Lionel Kinua. And Lionel was telling him about some of the spiritual beliefs that that long time ago, they used to know when they were going to pass away. They would have foreknowledge of that. They understood the rhythm of life and they could feel it. And in the 4 days before you, if you knew that was your time, in those 4 days before, you were free to roam. You were free to your soul could be free of the body and roam. So Jacob was coming back from a racial justice kind of gathering in Minneapolis. He said that really it was quite a big liberating time for him. And again, the icicles falling off the heart. But as he was flying across the country, he was going home. We were at Chemawa Indian School then. And that was a place where 400 Indigenous young people were going to school. And he was a teacher there. And he was so intent in this airplane of taking photos of where he would approximate each of these reservations were from, so he could show the youth that he was teaching these pictures and say, here's what God sees when God is looking down on your reservation or your wherever you are. So he's taking those all across the country until he got to Chemawa. But then when he thought about this for Mona and when she passed away, which was June 17th, he realized that those pictures of all of those clouds and all of the land and all of the sky and so forth that he was taking, he said Mona was there because it was 4 days before. This was in June that he was taking these pictures, and these were 4 days before she passed away. And he felt she was in those pictures as he was going across the country. And so even more of a reason to show the pictures to those young people, to tell them, who they were. Really, he wanted them to know who they really were, how important they were to the Creator, each and every one of them. So then time passed, and one morning he was getting ready for work, and by that time we had baby number 3, Kai. So Kai was just a little guy, and he had gotten up at some point and got into bed with us. And Jake was getting ready, and I was laying there in bed, trying to squeeze out the last few moments before, before everybody's up and, it all breaks loose. And I'm laying there, and Kai's laying up beside me, and Jacob comes into the room, and he's saying, oh, he said, I remember when I used to lay up against my grandfather's back, like Kai's laying next to you. And he burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, what's wrong? I thought, is he's having some kind of physical thing? What's going on? He was just sobbing. And I got up and I held him and I said, what's happening? He said, I had a dream last night. He said, a man came to visit me in my dream. And I said, oh, what happened? He said, well, we were in my father's house in Brockton, and that house had 4 rooms, and one of them was a bedroom in the northeast corner. He said, we were in that bedroom, and he said, we were sitting on a low bed. And my brother, I was sitting here. My brother was sitting right next to me, his oldest brother, Nars, who really represented every good thing. This was a stellar man, this oldest brother of his, who was like a lay preacher. He was an man of education. He went to Cook's Christian's training school down in Arizona, and he met his wife down there and he lived down there and served the Pima Papago people. So Nars was sitting here, Narcisse. And then he said sitting next to him was a man. And he said the man had a turban on. And he said, you know how in dreams you can speak to each other without actually moving your lips. I mean, you're transferring thoughts or something. I don't know. But yeah, I'm sure you've had that experience where you receive information, but nobody really said anything. So he said all the man did was lean forward, because he had to lean around Nars, right, to see Jake. And he crossed his hands like this, and he just observed, here's the Baha'i faith, and here's your life. Look. And that is what shocked Jake. That is what that man visiting him in his dream is what really caused this outburst of emotion. So that was that story, and I didn't say anything about it more, and he didn't say anything about it more. But I wondered what was going to happen. So 4 days went by, 5 days went by, 7 days went by, 9 days went by. Finally, it came to be June 17th, which was Mona's day. I hope I'm getting that right. I hope it's not the night. Now I'm afraid it's the 19th, but I'm almost positive it's the 17th. Anyways, that day arrived and I thought, oh my gosh. But he didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. So some days after that passed, and he said to me, he said, when the 17th came and it was Mona's birthday, actually, after I had that dream, he said, I thought on the 4th day, there's going to be a sign. On the 4th day, there's going to be a sign, and I'm going to know that I should become a Baha'i. But the 4th day came and went, and I didn't feel any sign. Then I thought, okay, well, 7, 7 is a sacred number. Okay, 7 days. So the 7th day came, nothing. He said, I didn't feel anything. Then he said, well, maybe it was a Baha'i number. Maybe it was the 9th day. So he waited for the 9th day. 9th day passed by, nothing. Then he said, I really didn't know what to do. But he said, I realized Mona's birthday was coming, or Mona's day that she ascended was coming. And it was, 19 days later. And he said, I waited and I waited for a sign. He said, but the sun was going down. And he knew everything about the Baha'i faith as much as I knew. And because he'd been around, he'd been to summer school, he'd hung around, the Baha'is, he had things at the house. We slept like 25 people in our house at a gathering. He'd been through it all. So he knew that was that when the sun goes down, that's the close of the day. And that was Mona's day. And as the sun was going down, he said, I just picked up the phone And I called the Baha'i number in town that was in Salem, and it was a recording. And he said, you know, I'm Jacob Bighorn, and I want to declare my belief in Baha'u'llah on this day. This day, I want to make sure that I declare my belief on this day. Then he said he hung up the phone and he thought, gosh, I you know how I did that. He said, I guess that was the sign I was waiting for. So when I think about that, I think about how did that happen? And I think about his mother. I think about her wishes for her son and her children, you know, to find this spiritual path. And really, that's really what she wanted. She wanted that strong spiritual path. Then I think about Jelena, and I think about Jelena coming in there and saying, you know, they can't do that to my sister. Then the addition to this story is, so as some of you may not know this, but my husband passed away in October of 2008. And one of the important things that many Indigenous people now observe is they like the relatives to bring their body home to be buried. And I don't know in every place if it's like this, but I know where I live, which is on the Cowichan territory, that's what they like to do here. And I certainly like to do it where we're from. And this worried Jacob because, you know, he knew the Baha'i law. That was actually one of the things that kind of was a sticker for him. But again, we had moved back to Kaiser. We had lived in we were at Chamawa, then we moved away. Jake got his master's, then we moved back. And when we moved back, I'm trying to locate this at the right time. Well, anyway, the important part of the story is this. We decided to take the kids over to the playground of their school. School hadn't started yet. Because I don't know about you guys. I think it's possible that many people have had not great experiences at school. And he thought about that and wanted some way to connect the children to something that they would feel protected. So we went over to the school and there was a big tree in the yard. So we went over to the big tree and we brought some tobacco. We put it down at the root of the tree and we said prayers. And Jake told our two that were going to go to school there, look, this is a place where we've placed our prayers and we've placed our offering. So if anything ever happens at school, you can always come back here. You run right to this tree and your prayers will be here and you'll be protected. So that was good. And that was very helpful. Well, the next year rolled around and Jacob said, well, he said, school hasn't started yet. Why don't we all go over to that tree as a family and say prayers again? And Jelena said, no. She said, I don't want to. And he was like really perplexed. She said, why don't we just go in the backyard and say some prayers? And he said, yeah, but the tree is over there at the school. And she said, we can pray right here in the backyard and we can put tobacco down in our own yard and it's the same earth. And that really bugged him. He wrestled with that. He wrestled with that for a long time because you can't deny that logic. It is the same earth. And actually, so when the time came, he decided that he was going to write all of his relatives to explain to them why he wasn't coming home to be buried. And he said, I realized from my daughter who was in elementary school that it's okay for me, it's okay for my body to go back to this Mother Earth right here where I am, because after all, it's the same earth. So then again, I think, the power of a little girl, who's now a mother of 3 boys. And I think, what a sense of gratitude I have to remember the powers of our relatives and the powers of the simple things that are right around us that can teach us so much. So it's 1 hour. I told Joyce that we would go about an hour, and so there we are.
Thank you.
Samantha, did you want to share something? No.
Thank you for your story.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I just wanted to thank you. I love the story of Jacob's journey. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Really, really touched the heart. And we who knew him really loved him too. So, yeah. And I wanted to tell Samantha that we really loved Walter and Dolores too when we were on Standing Rock. We would go down to that little house in the bottom was by Little Eagle, and really, really enjoyed our time with Walter and Dolores and Gwen. So, friends?
Any questions or comments or sharing?
Are you going to pass around the krumkaka now?
Well, I'm afraid it's like anything else. You cook that stuff up, it's gone in a couple of days. So.
Oh, shucks.
But for everybody that wants to know, krumkaka is a Norwegian pastry, and the reason we make it is because Little Brave bought us our krumkaka iron. So.
About ours.
She might have had an ulterior motive.
I did.
But those are goodies you can't put in the mail. They arrive as a powder when they come back because they just crumble.
I'll just have to find my way over to Arizona.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Hello. I'd like to know the name of the woman who's related to Catherine Alio.
Oh, yes. There. That's Kim Mani Ioskui. She lives in Peoria, Arizona.
She is unmuted, so the floor is yours, Kim.
Yeah, she is my grandmother. She and my mom, Marzia Hunter, was Miller for a while. They went to Alaska from Ohio in the early, I want to say the mid 50s. And my mother graduated from high school in Fairbanks. And then my brother and I were born there, raised there. And my grandmother, she just went all over the world.
Well, I'd like you to know something.
Please tell me.
I was about Catherine Alio. Joyce and I went on our pilgrimage, and we were at the shrines in the Holy Land, and I was one of the pioneers to Alaska myself, and knew Catherine.
What year?
Huh?
What year were you?
I became a Baha'i in '55 and pioneered in '56, and spent about 17 years in Alaska. Catherine was a circuit teacher at that time, and she came to our home in Ketchikan, spoke. We got to know her. And I wanted to tell you that when we went on our pilgrimage, that we were in Abdu'l Baha's house, and I guess the guardian lived there after Abdu'l Baha passed. And he had a picture on the wall in his bedroom of the first spiritual assembly that was Indian that was elected. Also, we discovered on his wall was a picture of the National Assembly of Alaska, 1957, when it was elected. Joyce and I are in that picture, and I think your mother is too, or your grandmother is too, Catherine.
Yeah.
My grandma.
Yeah, I think so.
Up to
One of you,
Yeah.
you know that her wonderful service
Yeah.
is enshrined in the House of Abdu'l-Baha.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's it's a treasure to know that. Didn't want to pass up the chance to tell you. Your grandmother was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have so many stories I have to make myself be quiet.
Oh, that was my mom's grandmother.
For the rest of you, Mary Beth and Kim joined late, along with their husbands, Mayron and Kevin. They're in Arizona, so but we knew them in.
We're in Desert Rose.
We're actually down at Desert Rose High School right now.
Oh, wow. Nice. Very good.
Been raining since we got here, which is very unusual for Arizona.
Yeah.
And we're going there tomorrow.
Wow. Who is going there? Well, this is.
I just want to say that I'm so happy to see Samantha. And your grandmother was a wonderful, wonderful soul.
Thank you very much.
The times there, I remember being sat down and
Thank you for calling on the grandmothers. It's a very spiritual thing to do.
Very
powerful.
I have to tell a very short story about Pat, the other grandmother in that vehicle. There's two grandmothers going along in that vehicle, going home. There's Patricia and there's Dolores. Well, at least two grandmothers. There's probably many more than that. But I have to say about Pat. You know, Pat, of course, Pat Locke was just such a, she was such an icon, you know, such a woman that everybody knew who she was in Indian education. And I just, of course, looked up to her and admired her, but I didn't know her well. But of course, by that time, Kevin had become a Baha'i. I was a Baha'i, so we knew, you know, we had that connection, and we realized that we were relatives, and so we call each other cousin, and so that was great. So I went to give testimony at a congressional hearing in Washington, D.C., which really isn't a big deal. Almost any Native person that was in education could have, you know, had that experience. It was very common. And I worked for a large Native organization that worked in education. So, you know, it wasn't anything prestigious. It was just a thing. So I went to Washington, D.C., and I was with a guy named Joe Delacruz. Joe Delacruz was a tribal chairman at Quinault, and he was also they used to call him the Ayatollah from Tahola. Anyways, he is a guy that had quite a bit of leadership ability and so forth. Anyways, he's a real jolly guy, and he was on the board of directors at the place that I worked at. So, you know, he saw me on the plane, and so he said, "Come on, I'll take you over to where they were holding a late night meeting before the Senate or before the hearings, the congressional hearings the next day." He said, "Oh, we're going to go over to National Congress of American Indians, and you know, we'll have a meeting to kind of talk about how we're going to do this." And so I said, oh, I was really glad, because I had never been to Washington, D.C., and I was scared out of my pants. And so I just went along with him. And of course, he'd been there a million times, and he was very comfortable. And he said, let's go get something to eat, because we won't get a chance to eat once this meeting starts, and then it'll be late and so forth. I said, okay. So we went into this restaurant, and who should be sitting there but Pat Locke and this other lady. So back in those days, I don't think that it's totally different today, but then, the government sort of pits, I shouldn't say the government, just the interests of urban native people and the interests of reservation people sometimes were pitted against each other. And the reason why that was, the only reason why that was, is limited resources. So you throw a few bones out and everybody's scrambling after those same bones, right? And that's just the nature of the thing. So the organization that I worked for was an urban organization. And the organization that the friend that was with Pat for dinner worked for, what represented the tribes. And she did not like where I worked. And I never met her before. And I'd seen her around, and I'd seen her. We had always attended the same meetings, but I had never crossed swords with her. But I knew that she wouldn't be above calling anybody down. And I thought, oh my God, I am going to be so embarrassed. Here's the chairman of our board at where I work, and there's Pat Locke, and then here's this woman, and Joe's over there. Oh, look at you two. Oh, come on, let's go over there. We should sit down and eat with them. And I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do? And then we walk up there, and he starts talking to him, and then he sort of remembers that I'm standing there. He goes, oh, he says, oh, so-and-so, do you know Deloria? And she looks at me and I say yes, and she says no. And then he looks over at Pat and he goes, oh, do you know her? She says, oh yeah, don't worry, that's my niece. Oh, oh, hallelujah. At that moment, I just could have kissed her. She just, and then of course, all the claws went down because Pat claimed me as her niece. And there was no trouble. There was no trouble after that. I don't know if Pat ever realized what she did. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But that's my favorite story of the Pat Locke stories that I have. And I'm grateful to her today. When I see her next, I'm just gonna tell her all about it, how she saved my life.
Beautiful. So good to see all you guys. I haven't seen a lot of you guys since I was 14, 15, maybe 13.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Hopefully we'll run into you sometime in Wakpala. We're going to try and travel up there in the summer once we can start traveling again.
Okay, yeah, we'll be up there during the summers.
Good, good.
What's the best month to visit there?
I want to go back for Wakpala powwow. That's in August.
Yeah.
August?
It's the third week in August, I think.
I had some correspondence with Kevin a while back, and came away wanting to see the country and know more about their place. We talked about and corresponded about building an earth house.
Oh yeah! Wow.
I have had some background in solar and electrical and stuff, and feel like that it really is a great solution for the Indian people, because it is their way of building houses, and they would well, and I really would like to see that happen.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Are you retired, Asa?
Yeah, I did 20 years and 6 months in the Army, and I retired. So, yeah. But I got another job, started another career.
So what's your new career?
It's kind of the same thing, but I'm a civilian now, training soldiers.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah.
Quite a different lifestyle from being in Wakpala or living on the res.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, it's good. It's good.
If you ever get over to Arizona, look us up.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to.
What part of Arizona? Are you guys in Phoenix or where?
Yeah, we're west of Phoenix, up
Okay.
Sun City West, it's called, and it's out on the northwest corner.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll have to get out that way.
Mhm.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Mhm.
Well, I'd like to thank the two of you for Diane and Jerry for having this fireside. It was wonderful reconnecting with so many of the people that we've known in years past.
When's the next one?
Yeah.
Every Friday night.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's an indigenous group from Alaska and Canada that meets tonight. In fact, I'm going to jump in the Zoom meeting in just a minute. And we're doing book 8.1, Indigenous style, which means, in case you don't know, it means we're not rushing. We're going to feel what the spirituality of the writings is so
Great.
close. It's coming out of Wrangell, Alaska, but there's other people joining in. So I'm going to have to excuse myself and go in the other.
Good night.
We're looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Giving this, it was a wonderful remembrance of grandmas. I love
It
that.
It was.
It was.
Where my grandmother spoke fluent Shemalgic, would not teach my sister and I one word of Shemalgic. She said, nope, nope. If you're going to get along, you're going to have to learn to speak English perfectly. But
Yeah.
taught me many other things. So I'm grateful for my grandmother.
We've been married 65 years this year.
Wow.
Cool.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Great.
Everybody says, how do you do that?
It shocks me when he says that.
I looked up
Oh, that's amazing.
the vow, we will all abide by the will of God. I looked up the word abide, and one of the definitions is to put up with. So I guess that's why we made it, because we put up with it.
It is. Well, one, I'm going to excuse myself now. Thank you. Thank you,
Good night.
Deloria. Good
God
night.
bless.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Oh, I will smile at you.
Earl and Laura, I just want to give my love and say it's so wonderful to see you. And thank you so much for your hospitality when I was at your home and how you opened your home so kindly. And really, it was such a memory. I'll never forget it.
We welcome you back, please. Can't wait to do it again. Thank you. Please come back.
Please.
Definitely. Definitely.
That
Somebody-
was a very special weekend at Earl and Laura's.
Somebody was saying today I'm doing a new book 1, and read this story about how Abdu'l-Baha never told anyone that he was leaving Haifa, and there was pilgrims there and so forth, and they expected to see him, in the evening when he would come, to at supper time and so forth. And he had left on the steamer to go to Egypt in the afternoon. And people were really shocked, but he was imprisoned for, was it 42 years or 47 years? I can't remember now.
Yeah.
Let's
Long
say,
time.
yeah, for over 40
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And we're having trouble with not even 1 year of
Yeah.
loss of freedom. Because I was thinking, I can't come see you yet for I don't know when, but I don't know.
someday the blessings of that meeting are still felt in this house.
Yep.
You know, we both crashed here before, right when COVID hit. We both came here, and it's just going throughout the house, the blessing after blessing and memory after memory, it can still be felt in this house. So I welcome the day. We're making our table. We've made our table even bigger. So he put a leaf in it. So someday we look forward to the day when we can meet in person and have big gatherings.
Around my Grammy Ragna's table.
Yes, yeah, yep. Ragnar's table. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna go. I also have another. There's that in Canada. There's a thing called Reconciliation Canada, and the chief, Robert Joseph, is very well acquainted with the Baha'is and his daughter, and they put on a devotional tonight that includes lots of Native people, and so I wanted to go to that. So I'll see you all.
Thank you so much.
Aloha.
We love you.
Aloha. Oh.
So we're.
I want to say hello to Lynette. Hi, Lynette.
Yes, hello. It's good to see you, and to Kim too. Yes.
Here's Kevin.
Oh, there's Kevin. Wonderful.
How are you doing?
Oh, good. Thanks. Yes, very well. Yes.
Keeping busy, huh?
Oh, very. Yes.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yes, I am. It's good. Yes.
I finally start work next week.
Oh, next week. Oh.
Finally. Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. You can catch these little spiritual interludes before you go back.
I know, right? It's
Yes.
incredible.
Yes.
Really, this is really nice, Jerry and Diane.
Good.
Really
It
neat
was
idea.
a nice evening. It was a nice
So how
evening.
far is that from your place, where you live?
What's that?
How far is Desert Rose from where you live?
Oh, yeah.
It was
Oh,
a-
it's about
an
a little
hour and a
over an
half.
hour.
Hour and a half.
Oh.
Yeah, about an hour and a half.
Oh, that's all right. Yes.
To here, where we're camping.
Had you been there before?
I didn't hear the camping conversation.
Yeah, it'll be full tomorrow when Jerry and Diane get here.
Oh, okay. Oh.
As far as the camping, I don't know about the rest of the.
I don't think they're having any activities.
Yeah, there's
because
really
of
nothing going
COVID,
on.
But they have this little 5-spot camping area.
Oh.
So.
But there's people around here. People live here, so year round. So
yeah.
That's big for the little dog.
Still people here. It's my first time here. It's really pretty.
Wow.
What I've seen.
Yeah. From what you've seen.
In the rain.
All the buildings, I mean. Yeah, in the rain.
Yeah,
Went from the truck to the camper.
And got soaked.
And got soaked. It's a downpour.
Yeah.
Well, there won't be a Fireside next week, will there? Because there's a feast, right? On Friday.
Oh, that's true.
Yes.
What's next week?
What's next week?
Friday is a feast.
Oh, feast.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. February 5th. That's right.
So yeah, so we won't have one next week. I was thinking about an idea for the fireside, and I'll bounce it off of you guys about just having general questions that I would ask whoever's at the fireside, like, and warn them ahead of time. Like someone would talk about progressive revelation for just briefly, not go into details, but just briefly. And maybe someone could talk about Baha'i community life, which would be feasts and the calendar and holy days. And maybe somebody could tell some and explain about Abdu'l-Baha,
Or talk about Baha'u'llah.
and answer some questions about the Bab and Baha'u'llah. But what do you think? Would that be a format that, in lieu of somebody volunteering to give a history presentation of the Baha'i faith, and if
Sounds
somebody
good.
wants to volunteer to do that, they could do that.
Hit the
Because
button. Hit the three
my
buttons.
friend Leah needs to know about the history of the faith.
She'll probably be there next week then, will she?
I think so.
Oh, the week after. Yes, yes.
Yeah, she was just
I
sick
know, I love
tonight.
it.
So.
Who is it?
Leah, her friend
Oh,
that was supposed to be here.
Seeker.
Hold the bottom of the thing really. Just
And Lynn was the only one from Central Oregon here tonight.
Yes.
Is there something else going on?
She's
Or?
recording this whole.
No. No,
Oh, really?
nothing else on tonight.
Well, she didn't mean to.
Oh,
We just see
Mark
it.
usually comes, doesn't he?
I haven't seen it.
Pardon?
But
he didn't show up.
No, yeah, Michael texted me and said he couldn't come tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, thank you, Lynn, for coming.
Oh, I'm happy to. Oh, I loved the speaker. Yes.
Yeah, she's.
Yes.
She was really good.
Yeah, she's a good friend.
She did. Mary Beth held. She didn't mean to, but she held the very bottom of the screen and just held it and recorded.
It seems to me that a lot of Indigenous people just innately know about all these spiritual verities of the Baha'i faith or religion in general. It just sort of comes naturally to them, and a lot of we Westerners, we've departed so far from it.
Yep.
They're so intuitive.
What felt really nice tonight was the casualness of the participants, although we didn't know any of them other than Little Brave and Deloria. But everybody was really friendly and happy and joyful, and I miss that about being around Native people.
Yes.
No, I felt like it felt like home. I mean, it just reminded me so much of Alaska, and it felt like home. It was kind of an interesting feeling because I don't miss Alaska per se at all.
You mean just the relaxed atmosphere, or
just the people too? The people.
Yes. I was telling one of the Baha'is today about the Fireside, and I said, sometimes I feel that I'm so caught up in taking notes, counting numbers and all that, that you sort of forget about the spirit of the whole thing, and you've got to remind yourself why you're doing all that. And I think this sort of atmosphere helps bring it back, the camaraderie and the love and the feelings and experiences of other people. Yes.